I asked you guys a while ago through a poll what you'd be most interested in for my big ranking project of the year, and you pretty soundly said that you wanted a ranking of every Gravity Falls episode, so I'll gladly go through the show again. This is a series that I love with all of my heart. I watched it as new episodes were dropping as I grew up, and the fan theories and real-time speculation were like nothing else I'd ever experienced. When every other cartoon that I grew up with remained very episodic for as long as I was watching it, having this one serialized story with such a strong mystery hook let it stand out among the rest for me. It made for such a high level of emotional investment to grow attached to these characters and see all the reveals of the answers to the big questions. They knocked down all the dominoes they set up with grace, and even a rewatch a few years back knowing all the twists already only cemented this as my favourite cartoon. For now anyway. Always room for something else to come along and snag that title. I find it fun to watch other videos ranking these episodes, so it was only a matter of time before I put my own list out there. I'd never really put a ton of thought into the specific order I'd have them in before, so this gives me the excuse to finally figure that out. I'm gonna rank all 40 episodes of the show from my least favourite to my favourite. I'm not counting any shorts. Weirdmageddon Part 3 is going to be considered as a single extended episode, I don't care what Disney Plus says. I'll break the list up into tiers for an easier editing process on my end, but expect it to be very top heavy, and the general YouTuber shtick about how this is only my opinion and it's fine to disagree, blah blah. Time to start ranking now. In my rewatch for the show, there were two possible contenders for last place that I'd even consider dropping down to D tier. Funnily enough, what would normally be the pair I pay no second mind to ended up being the ones I laboured over the rankings of the most. Not only which of them would go at the bottom, but also whether they really were bad enough to not reach the C tier threshold, or if I only felt like that because they didn't meet Gravity Falls' usual lofty standards. Eventually, I decided that even if I didn't especially like them, I wasn't actively miserable watching them, and they still had plenty of redeeming elements. As for which one draws the short straw, if you'd asked me back in April, I would have said Roadside Attraction was easily the show's low point. After giving both of them a separate dedicated rewatch, I think I've changed my mind. Last place is Season 2, Episode 9, The Love God. For the most part, this episode's actually pretty decent. Having Mabel play matchmaker to try and help Robbie be happy is innocent enough, and I like that he does end the episode having been able to move on from Wendy and find another person in his life. His parents are also super funny for as brief as their screen time is. The way they're so casual and cheerful about death and the corpses they work with is so morbidly hilarious. And do I even need to say anything about the Stan balloon? Even if you're watching this video without having seen the show before, I mean, first of all, what are you doing watching my shit? Go watch Gravity Falls, it's fantastic. More topically though, you've likely seen this clipped and posted around on your social media of choice. It's a great scene, one that stuck with me for the better part of a decade now. John DiMaggio's in this episode too, and while the Love God isn't a particularly memorable character in the grand scheme of the Gravity Falls cast, his vocal performance at least manages to make him fun to watch in the moment. This all seems pretty good. What's wrong with it then? Let's not dance around it, the ending is straight up awful. Love potions are already a concept I find sort of flawed. Making people fall in love against their will does not sit right with me. Having Robbie and Tambry stay together in a relationship they only started because of their mutual drugging just doesn't work. The messaging of don't interfere with others' love lives is good on paper. It's thrown down the gutter when it's only applied to not fixing your previous interference. It's not even like I don't think the episode could end with them as a couple. Just go about it in a different way. Off the top of my head, maybe don't have them get potioned to begin with. Either the food part of Robbie's potion fries cancel out the effects, or they just get someone else's order by mistake which isn't realised until the very end. Then they can resolve any other problems they caused off screen. That way they can fall for each other of their own accord. Or if you want to go with it being true love, either establish within the episode that the effects are temporary instead of clarifying that in the real life journal 3 later, or have the anti-love potion have no effect. Maybe the love potion can be said to only nudge people together instead of being actual hypnosis. Just about anything would be an improvement. The way it is right now, I think, is Gravity Falls' single biggest writing blunder. Not helped by the other part of the ending being Wendy's friend group, who I don't care about, getting back together because Thompson goes back to being the group punching bag. I'm all for friendships where people mutually take the piss out of each other. I can't say I'm too thrilled about the messaging of a friend group being fine so long as there's one person that everyone can pick on. It really rubs me the wrong way, even if there probably wasn't any malintent behind it. Bit of a rant there, but even with all that, I still think the episode balances out to being fine and watchable thanks to plenty of solid gags and having its heart in the right place, even if it drops the ball by the very end. Season 2, Episode 16, Roadside Attraction. Now for what I originally thought was going to be last place. I've softened up on this one a lot. My previous disdain for it was mainly because of where it placed in the episode lineup. Having the cast go on a road trip immediately after hammering in that they need to make the shack a safe space from Bill is such a bizarre choice. There's not a ton interesting that goes on in this trip to make up for that, and the lack of Ford really stings. I appreciate them trying to resolve the Dipper and Wendy plotline. Obviously this isn't something I'd expect Dipper would immediately forget about and move on without ever looking back, but being 14 episodes after Into the Bunker makes this feel like a desperate scramble to dig up the remnants of an already completed arc to have anything going on here. By this point, it's too little too late to do an episode like this. There are a few decently cool locations they go to on their journey, and the jokes are mostly as solid as ever, but when the main crux of the story is something I just don't really care about and the placement in the timeline feels completely antithetical to the previous episode, there's only so much that I can get out of this. There's no fun mystery or cool supernatural thing until near the end. The humanoid spider creature's a neat concept and the chase is serviceable, but not much more than that. Despite not placing last, I might still say that this is the Gravity Falls episode with the least going for it in terms of entertainment value. Why does this place above Love God then? Well, that one crashed and burned with its ending, whereas I think Roadside Attraction actually has a valuable message to it. Throughout the episode, we see Dipper hitting on a bunch of girls solely to boost his own confidence, and while he does consider their feelings, he's advised to continue being kind of an ass. That gets him in some hot water when Candy develops a crush on him, and he later has to face all the girls at the same time and get called out for his shit. In a vacuum, this scene's pretty tedious, and I don't care much about Candy as a character to want to see her and Dipper pan out. In the context of what the episode is trying to say, it does do a good job showing the dangers of this kind of jerkish behaviour and how it can hurt the people around you. Stan gets his own side of this story, where he's too busy flirting with Spider Lady and falling for her flattery to realise that he's being lured into a trap so that he can be eaten. He's maybe a little too dumbed down, sure. I still think it works for showing the other ways that this jerkish attitude can backfire. Once that's all dealt with, Dipper and Stan get to talk about how they both suck at this whole romance thing, and it's really nice. I like that we get to see more of Stan's direct caring side towards Dipper in this episode, and the message about not treating love like a game is a good one to be teaching a younger audience. This series is no stranger to rejecting toxically masculine behaviours, so it's neat to see that continue here. It's just that the other episodes to do similar things are far more entertaining. For as much as it does right, I still don't especially like Roadside Attraction. It's mostly pretty mediocre, and I can't say I'm too thrilled about a detour like this in the plot-heavy final fifth of the show. Season 1, Episode 17, Boys Crazy. Does what it sets out to do, I just don't get a ton out of it. The jokes riffing on boy bands in the A-plot are sometimes pretty amusing, and I like Mabel realising that she should let several times go of her own accord, but I can't say the jokes hit hard enough to make her hoarding them all that fun to watch. I like this side of the episode enough, but it doesn't stack up next to any of Season 1's other main plots for me. Dipper's B-plot is a fair deal weaker. I understand that it's supposed to be a growth moment for him where he realises not to go looking for conspiracies in places where there aren't any. It gets that across well and hammers in that you shouldn't look at someone else's breakup as an opportunity for yourself. The messaging works, but I just don't really care about him trying to break up Robbie and Wendy. The stuff from the plagiarized CD coming out in reverse didn't scan that well for me, and even though I get its purpose to the story, I got really frustrated with the scene where Dipper tries to ask Wendy to go bowling with him. Even Stan, who has my favourite jokes in the episode, doesn't get off scot-free since he's written to be far kinder to Dipper than he'd been willing to let on for the rest of the season. He's really supportive in a way that makes it kind of jarring to go back to Dreamscaperers 2 episodes later. Not a bad episode by any means, but pretty weak by Gravity Falls standards. Season 2, Episode 6, Little Gift Shop of Horrors. The only non-canon episode of the show, so it's the only one you're legally allowed to call filler. The anthology stories here unfortunately don't do a ton for me. Well, outside of the stop motion one, that is. That's a great short that mixes the 2D and stop motion animation perfectly and is full to the brim with self-aware jokes about the medium that really land for me. The fact that Mabel's fear is made worse rather than being conquered is a really underrated banger joke. And then everything else is kind of whatever. The hand witch bit is decently enjoyable, it has a few chuckles, but I'd never think about it when I'm not watching it. Truth 8 clears so hard it's not even funny. The Waddles Become Smart story is easily the weakest of the three, being really rushed with an unearned emotional ending that isn't nearly funny enough to make up for that. And it's all tied together with the weird connecting thread of Stan trying to sell merch to a tourist and then drugging them. It's a mostly fine episode with 1/4 of it being great, so I guess I enjoy it more than I don't, but it's nowhere near entertaining enough for me to call it required viewing when it isn't part of the show's main canon. Season 1 Episode 6, Dipper vs. Manliness. While I greatly appreciate the messaging teaching kids they don't have to conform to the typical idea of what's considered manly, the episode doesn't stick out in any other major way for me. Comedically, I just didn't find this one quite as strong as a lot of what's around it. The Manitors are fun for as one note as they are. I like Dipper's training with them, and for as short and not all that interesting as the multi-bear fight is, the resolution with the two bonding over the greatest parody song ever written is pretty sweet. Mabel and Stan are a bit more out of line than I'd like at the start though. And speaking of Stan, I'm not quite as into his subplot. It's not bad, I enjoy some of the jokes, and it's a solid compliment to the Dipper stuff where he gets taught not to embody some of the more off-putting traits of traditional masculinity. It's just held back by how I don't care much for his crush on Lazy Susan, not helped by how it only ever gets addressed again in a gag that shows their relationship ended off-screen. Not that the credits scene left them much room to take it further in the first place. I enjoy the overall package of the episode well enough, but it's overshadowed by another episode later down the line that has similar messages about sticking up for yourself and rejecting toxic masculinity while delivering them all in a much more entertaining and compelling way. We're only 5 episodes in and we're already getting to the ones I think are pretty solid. Time for the B tiers. Season 1 Episode 4, The Hand That Rocks the Mabel. Probably one of the episodes I have the least to say about, because it's just generally solid all around without any exceptional elements or major missteps to speak of. Gideon's a fun antagonist, and it's impressive how creepy they managed to make him without being unpleasant to sit through. There's a solid story in here about how bad peer pressure can be, and I like seeing the twins look out for each other, with Dipper offering to tell Gideon to piss off on Mabel's behalf, then Mabel putting her foot down as soon as Gideon threatens to hurt Dipper. Stan's side of the episode isn't anything to write home about, and it's weird that he'd make Mabel get into an arranged marriage, but his obsession with the painting is funny, so there's that. Best bit of the episode is for sure the Journal 2 reveal. That'd be so cool to experience for the first time again. Season 1 Episode 5, The Inconveniencing. I always forget how early they set up the later conflict of Dipper wanting to grow up too fast. Obviously it can sometimes be a bit cringe to watch him pursue his crush on Wendy, but I've grown to really appreciate the development it sets up for him later down the line, and that all started here. This is on the weaker end of that episode archetype though. I don't much care for any of Wendy's friends or some of the social awkwardness jokes. The Lammy dance is the only time in my entire rewatch of the show that I had to look away from my screen. Maybe also that one scene in Roadside Attraction, I don't remember. I'm sorry, it's not even a bad scene, it's entirely a me thing. I'm just not able to kill the part of me that cringes. Thankfully the parts I don't like aren't enough to ruin the episode for me or anything. It does still have some iconic bits like Mabel's smile dip high and the old person murder rap. My favourite bit of the episode isn't even part of the main plot. I absolutely adore the brief snippets to Stan watching the stuffy old British lady movie. The disgruntled character getting passionately into something you wouldn't expect is an archetype of joke that's very easy to land for me, which this one certainly does. It's also very sweet to see Wendy keep Dipper's secret since he kept hers earlier. As much as I can't bear to sit through the Lammy dance, it does play very well into a strong bit of character writing, and the episode would be worse off if it didn't have it. The rest of the adventure in the store leading up to it is plenty fun. Good jokes, enjoyable antagonist, plays well into Dipper's arc, gives us our first taste of the show's fucked up imagery by Disney Channel standards. It's solid. Season 1 Episode 4, Bottomless Pit. Significantly better than Little Gift Shop. Partly because the framing device is much more entertaining and provides the chance for characters to interact, and partly because the stories are better in general, even if the claymation one is still probably the best short story overall. The voiceover one has some solid jokes coming from the inherent comedic value of Dipper with a deeper voice, and I can understand why everyone would be so mean to him in a story that's told from his perspective. But overall it's just kind of fine, with an emotional resolution that doesn't feel especially well built up or earned. Seuss's really great pinball story has a fun setting and plenty of great jokes, with the only slight hiccup being Seuss hesitating to delete his cheated high score. I know it's fictional in-universe, still doesn't make it any less of a contrived way to delay the conclusion. Truthache is easily the best of the three in my opinion. Honest Staniel's forced truths are hilarious, and the stress they cause make Mabel deciding to lie at the end much more believable.
Wow, an author! Can you teach me how to read?
What? Author?
Oh my god, shut up. He got so lucky that he wasn't asked about anything plot relevant and was never randomly compelled to spill about his past. I love the driving bear bit too. On average, a pretty fun anthology episode with a solid connecting thread. Grunkle Slunko Wins the Funko Bunkle was unironically the best part. Season 1 Episode 1, Tourist Trapped. Simultaneously an imperfect episode and a perfect starter for this wonderful show. Some of the jokes did feel like they hadn't fully figured out the show's brand of writing, since the cutaways don't always Freddy's land, and some things like the Rainbow Vomit and Schmebulot came across as them trying to start off with memeable moments so that the show would be talked about more. Thankfully, this episode hits it out of the park in the areas that matter. The characters feel fully formed right out of the gate, endearing me to every single one of our core cast. Dipper is the paranoid nerd always looking to learn more, Mabel is the happy-go-lucky girl obsessed with a summer romance, and Stan is the mean old man with a caring side deep down. Nobody feels out of line with their later portrayals in the slightest. What really sells this is the hook for the overarching plot. They introduce Journal 3 and tease both the unknown author and Stan's secret behind the vending machine. These aren't focused on too much until the back half of the show, since everything before then is more about endearing you to the characters and telling fun episodic stories. But setting up both mysteries in the pilot makes for a great way to grab the audience's attention, since clues for the answers to both could be littered anywhere, even when the main plot of an episode seems unrelated. And although the comedy has its misses, it's overall still more hits than not. The world's most distracting object is easily my favourite bit in the episode, and the subtle foreshadowing to Norman being a bunch of gnomes is so smartly done while being really funny. You never really start off with your best episode, which this one naturally isn't trying to be, but it more than does the job. A great first impression to leave off with, that only ranks relatively low because of how much more ambitious they got once they found their footing a bit more and could get the ball rolling on the plot.
Eeny, meeny, miny, you.
Oh, you can't do this to me. Season 1, Episode 2, Legend of the Gobblewonker. Some stuff in this gives me the impression that it would have worked a little better if it wasn't the second episode of the series. The opening bit where Dipper mentions how they see weirder stuff every day feels like it should have come after we've seen these characters on more adventures. And primarily Stan's loneliness getting him to want to spend more time with the kids feels like it's missing some previous episodes to establish it, so it doesn't invest me quite as much as I wish it did. Regardless, this is a great time. It's got plenty of jokes you'll see front and center in Gravity Falls Funny Moments compilations. The blindfolded driving, disposable cameras, her aim is getting better, you know the ones. It still has some cutaways carried over from the pilot, which are on the weaker end, but that's only compared to the rest of the episode managing to be really funny. The hunt for the Gobblewonker is quite fun too. I really like how it's used to set up McGucket's engineering skills, and the ending where everyone does go fishing with Stan is super sweet. Absolutely loved getting to see the photo montage. Even if I wish it was set up better, it's still a very solid emotional center to everything and hits way harder with the full context of the series. Season 1, Episode 18, The Land Before Swine. For some reason, every time I think of this episode, my mind immediately goes to the admirable animation made about it. Not sure why, because I remember borderline nothing that was said in it. Maybe because that made it more of a surprise to see it more heavily criticized years afterwards? Not that I don't get why. Liar-revealed stories and contrived bickering are pretty valid things to not like. I don't personally take much issue with anything here though. Well, okay, the whole I should have put that pig outside ages ago thing feels so ridiculously forced for the big argument to happen. But aside from that, this is all pretty solid. I see some say that this happens too late in the season for Dipper to reasonably take issue with Seuss being a klutz, which I would get under normal circumstances. In the case of this episode, it's a bit different since Dipper even notes how important this is to Mabel. So Seuss messing up has more consequence than it did at any previous point in the show, and I find Dipper snapping not too unreasonable. Having Seuss ultimately be the one to save the day with his dinosaur trivia knowledge is a great conclusion for this part of the story. I like this half of the episode a ton. The Mabel and Stan stuff has its low points as I mentioned. Everything else though is really good. It sets up Stan's guilt from letting Mabel down really well, his fake flashback is hysterical, and I adore how it comes full circle with him actually risking his life to punch the big lizard in the face. The scene of him giving waddles back to Mabel is so goddamn sweet, dude, I can't take it anymore. Fantastic ending to what was previously a standardly solid episode with a bit of a frustrating middle section and not as many quotable lines as its contemporaries. Averages out to being really great, banger episode. Season 2, Episode 14, The Stanchurian Candidate. Arguably the black sheep of Season 2 in terms of its quality because it's definitely not punching in the same weight class as most of its peers for me, but at the same time I still love the episode and wouldn't put it anywhere near the trilogy of whatever at the bottom. This one's a fun self-contained episode. It's the only one to have Ford without revolving around him, which is a neat novelty of showing what it's like to have him as part of the gang while he does his own thing. I like that they gave Stan a little arc about feeling inadequate and wanting approval. I didn't really much care about the falling out halfway through or the addition of Seuss to the mayoral race, which didn't go anywhere, but generally the election stuff is quite fun. They managed to avoid taking sides without feeling spineless, just poking fun at politics in general. Everything to do with the mind control tie was the best part of the episode. What a great source of comedy that never lets up. This brings Gideon back as a threat again, which is neat. He's no Bill, but we have the credit credit scene showing that we don't have much longer to wait for him. I don't know, this is good, not much else to say. Season 1, Episode 11, Little Dipper. Gotta love an episode built around my favourite kinds of short jokes. The ones done constantly at someone only slightly shorter than the one telling them. There obviously reaches a point where height jokes become mean. However, if you're 5'9", you will be repeatedly hearing about falling between the seats in my car. Anyway, the actual content of Little Dipper is really good. The conflict with Mabel rubbing in something that she can finally beat Dipper at feels believable to actual sibling bickering, and the resolution they have is pretty nice. I also love the invisible wizard bit after Dipper grows himself. It's so fucking stupid in a way that makes the joke a slam dunk for me. The shrinking device is fairly creative as well, and I still laugh when Mabel accidentally tells Gideon what it is. Once he gets the light, he gets a really fun confrontation with Stan in the Hall of Mirrors, whose reaction to Gideon's defeat is priceless. "You're the light of my life too, pal" is such an underrated banger line. Can't say I'm a fan of the extreme close-up bits though, those are pretty gross. Not one of my favourite episodes or anything, but definitely still a great one that I had a ton of fun revisiting. Season 1, Episode 3, Headhunters. I don't have a ton to say here. It feels like the show is getting more and more into its groove with fewer cutaways and a more focused story. It is significantly funnier than the two that preceded it, with Stan shopping for the mannequins, We Don't Serve Minors, and that one dude at the bar all sticking with me even as I had all the later episodes fresher in my memory. It's a simple but fun murder mystery that arguably benefits from later context more than anything else pre-Ford, since it completely changes how you see Stan being startled by a doppelganger of himself and being distraught over his death. The wax figures are entertaining culprits, and the mystery leading the twins to the reveal has them see an even more disturbing sight with Toby's video. What a strange man. Hey wait, how did they get the photo of Wax Stan's head if Sherlock had it the whole time? I'm onto you, Alex Hirsch, you hack fraud. Why didn't you prioritize that minor bit of continuity over the major reveals? Season 1, Episode 13, Boss Mabel. I often see this get brushed off as one of Season 1's weaker outings, and I guess I can see it. I can't say I agree though. I found this one a ton of fun to the point where I'd even considered putting it in A tier, then reflected a bit and decided it didn't quite hit the heights I'd want for me to call it amazing. Outside of the way the Gremlins defeated, which might be one of my favourite jokes in the show. On the other end though, there's not much I can point to in terms of sour spots. I like the simple story about Mabel and Stan feuding over how to run the Mystery Shack and how it shows the pros and cons of both of their methods. Stan's makes everyone miserable, while Mabel's just lets everyone walk all over her, eventually realising that there needs to be a compromise between being a ruthless businessman and not becoming a total ass. It works pretty well, and Stan's side plot on the game show is super funny. I like to believe he was so confident despite coming back with nothing because he was sure Mabel would have made negative profit. Not much to say about this one. It hits all the beats it sets out to and is overall very entertaining. I also remember the question baby bit playing in ads all the time and getting a bit sick of it. Not sure what to do with that information, but it's been in my head for a decade, so I wanted to have it on the record. Season 1, Episode 16, Carpet Diem. Body swap stories can be a cliche for sure, but they can definitely lead to some fun scenarios. This one having Dipper and Mabel trying to actively sabotage each other definitely works. I'm sure there was some clip in here that played on commercials all the time that I don't quite remember. Stan unknowingly teaching Mabel about puberty is definitely the funniest bit of the episode. Can't say I'm as overwhelmingly won over by the big finale where everyone else gets involved. They don't really do a whole lot interesting with it, but it's not bad by any means. I am admittedly sorta disappointed by how they don't switch up the voices at all. It's always fun to hear voice actors try to capture the mannerisms of their co-stars, and this one doesn't even attempt that. A different point of praise I can raise in its place is that they give a few subtle design changes for the body swap twins, giving Mabel the bags that Dipper typically has on his eyes, and making Dipper's hair curlier while his mouth is drawn like Mabel's typically is. Beyond the body swapping carpet plot though, this has a ton of great foreshadowing for later in the series. Dipper and Mabel's conflict over wanting their space from each other is like an omen for the final arc of the show, which is resolved in a super sweet way with Mabel coming to understand Dipper's frustrations some more after walking a mile in his shoes. I'm glad the room ended up going to Seuss instead, my man deserves it. The even more subtle foreshadowing is with Stan and the glasses. In general, the earlier episodes are so much better to rewatch with the full context of what everything's setting up, and seeing Stan try to nonchalantly grab these and later clearly being lost in thought over them is retroactively really sad. A great episode through and through, except none of what I just said matters because now we're on to the A tiers. Not even halfway through, by the way. God, I love this show, Charlie. Season 1, Episode 12, The Summerween Trickster. Gravity Falls getting a Halloween episode is the kind of thing that doesn't require an explanation for why it works. They bring the spooky tone the show utilizes so well, and attach it to the incredibly creative concept of a monster born from the shitty leftover candy that nobody likes. weeks. The conflict between Dipper saying he's too old for trick-or-treating and Mabel not wanting to let their childhood experiences go was like a smaller scale version of what the latter part of season 2 hinges on. It's really good foreshadowing, and I like that Dipper just owns the fact that he was trick-or-treating at the end. The jokes are great as usual. Stan's bit about trying to scare the kids has an amazing payoff. He was also shown to have pants on, so we don't need to send him back to jail, thankfully. And Sue saying he ate a man alive tonight so bluntly is one of my favourite line reads. I like that Robbie eats shit and dies off screen. Why did he give Dipper the flyer though? He wasn't even asked to. Also, I noticed 2 separate, guys within a few minutes of each other, and I thought that was funny to note. Season 1, Episode 8, Irrational Treasure. A delight of an episode that has Mabel's silliness contribute to a mystery and show her that she should continue to embrace it. The mystery itself is a blast to follow as the twins uncover the conspiracy of the forgotten president Quentin Tremblay while being pursued by the delightful gay sheriffs. This is one of that pair's best episodes for sure. There are so many amazing gags along the way. The "we're gonna have to break in" scene is so dumb and it constantly makes me crack up thinking about it. Tremblay is one of the season's most memorable one-off characters. They play a lot into how quirky he is, which can admittedly sometimes be hit or miss, but when they hit, they had me reeling. I'll put up with any stinker jokes when they are more than counterbalanced by the existence of the negative $12 bill. And that ending with Dipper deciding he didn't learn a damn thing and so he tells Pacifica about her family being made of Gojo tier frauds is so cathartic. He's right, revenge is so underrated. Oh yeah, Stan's here too. His B-plot in the stocks has plenty of good bits. It's one of season 1's consistently funniest outings, very little for me to fault. Season 1 episode 20, Gideon Rises. Basically everything I could have asked for with the first season finale. Gideon's at its most threatening, the emotional stakes are high with the twins getting sent back to California, and there's a giant robot for epic chase scenes in a really fun fight. Dipper leaping off the cliff into the robot's eye to save his sister is maybe the coolest thing ever. It's great to see him get that confidence to act even without the journal and realise that it isn't what defines his capability. Gideon's defeat is so cathartic too. Loved seeing Stan out him as a fraud. I saw a comment recently saying that one of the reasons he may have known from the start that Gideon was never a psychic was because he always called him Stanford. I don't know if that was intentional, but it works as a nice detail to pick up on rewatch either way. Though how did he know the cameras were displayed in the robot? What's going on there? Were they always there? Are they pre-recorded or a live feed? I don't get it. It's not a deal breaker or anything, but it is weird if you think about it for too long. Not important. I'd rather bring up how this feels like it comes full circle from the pilot. The gnomes get brought back only for Gideon to defeat them in a new way, the grappling hook finally gets a payoff, and they finally give us another tease as to Stan's secret behind the vending machine. After 19 episodes of leaving us guessing, it gives us just enough to end the season on an even stronger hook than it started with, now that we've had a chance to anchor ourselves in this world and have more mysteries to speculate on. Season 2 episode 10, Northwest Mansion Noir. It feels very wrong to have Northwest Mansion as one of my least favourites from season 2, especially given how often I see it praised as one of the show's all-time best. It's not like I'm going to object to what everyone else says about it though, because the Dipper and Pacifica plot really is fantastic. It's great to see Pacifica go against her parents after finding out about her family's horrible history, and it digs into how the wealthy will exploit the working class far more directly than I would have expected. Archibald Corduroy is one of the best antagonists in the show too, because on top of his fury at the family who took advantage of him being understandable, he also provides some of the show's darkest imagery. Like, obviously this isn't that intense in the grand scheme of horror, but for a Disney Channel show, I'm shocked at how much they got away with. Plus, he straight up wins, and the threat only disappears once Pacifica gives him what he wants, for everyone else in the town to be allowed into the party. Dipper and Mabel would have straight up died, and they even call back to the shapeshifter's warning, which is a great Easter egg. What holds this back for me a little from being one of the highlights of the show is the Mabel subplot. I wouldn't have expected them to write her out of the episode, and it does take advantage of the party setting, but I can't say that I cared for the drama between her and her friends flirting with the Austrian guy. It's not poorly done or anything, I just didn't care whenever it cut back to them. And for as good as Pacifica's development is here, it is dampened by how it doesn't seem to fully stick. She doesn't show up again until the finale, where she gets this whole bit about refusing to hold McGucket's hand and then her parents encourage her to. It feels like that whole interaction is backwards. A few minor gripes, I guess, but let its relatively low placement compared to the general consensus speak more to how much I like everything else ranked higher and how tough it was to order everything. This episode is still excellent and deserves all the praise I've seen for it. The "You're the Worst" scene is also pretty funny. Season 2 episode 18, Weirdmageddon Part 1. Okay, so not one one that feels much less weird to call one of Season 2's lesser showings in Northwest Mansion. This is still an incredibly strong opening act for the 3-part finale. It sets the stakes flawlessly, with Bill getting some of his most unhinged and entertaining scenes yet. Shuffling the holes on Preston's face is iconic for a reason, and one-shotting Time Baby tells him is an unstoppable force. He makes the most of his relatively brief screen time, and I'm sure I'd love him even more if the scrap song It's Gonna Get Weird was able to make the final cut. Dipper and Wendy surviving through the apocalypse is great too, especially the weirdness bubbles changing the animation up during the car chase with Gideon and his gang. My only gripe with this is Gideon changing his mind way too quickly. I'm all for him realizing that he's a little shit and getting redeemed. He is 10 after all, but it needed a bit more time and setup for me to be fully sold on it. Everything else about this episode is on point. The tone mixes in the chaos with the drama and the typical humor super well. Shout out to Teeth, by the way. Many of my friends would have been very upset if I left that out. Season 2 episode 13, Dungeons, Dungeons and More Dungeons, does a great job endearing me to Ford and integrating him naturally into the main cast. The D&D parody jokes bring me so much joy, especially now having watched and played some games of it myself so I can finally understand some of what they're talking about. Weird Al was stellar casting as Probabilitor, and facilitates a fairly simple yet still enjoyable battle in the third act, which is cool to see Mabel and Stan get into. The main plot isn't put on full hold by any means though. The ending reveals the dimensional rift created by Stan's use of the portal, and establishes the threat it poses if it ends up breaking. Having Dipper keep it a secret from Mabel is yet another piece of foreshadowing for the final arc's conflict that I continue to appreciate more upon each rewatch. Not sure what else I can add about this one, I loved it a lot. My favourite bits were the meta duck-tective jokes. They're so eye-rollingly lame, but in an endearing way rather than coming across as a corporation trying to be relatable. Season 1 episode 19, Dreamscaperers. Shockingly enough, this is no longer my favourite of Season 1. I used to think it was easily the best of the lot. Now it's dropped down a bit for me because of the whole Dipper only hears part of an awkwardly worded sentence, draws his own conclusions, and then finds out the rest later shit, which is a bit bothersome. It makes sense why he'd be paranoid and assume the worst, but the way Stan paces his sentence is so ridiculously contrived in order to bend to what the plot needs. Maybe Stan could have said a mean thing, Seuss calls him out on it, and then he reluctantly tells him the full story. That seems on paper like it'd feel less cheap. That's still the only big drawback for me though, the rest of this is fantastic. It introduces Bill perfectly, and even though they seem to still be figuring him out, he's such an entertaining villain that brings us to the coolest setting the first season has to offer. Stan's mindscape facilitates so many amazing gags looking into his memories and just looks flat out incredible. The final battle's an absolute blast, Xyler and Kraz are top tier side characters, that one misstep with Dipper subplot is saved by a really strong emotional resolution showing that Stan does care even if in this somewhat toxic way that's all he was brought up to know. I don't think I need to sell anyone on why Dreamscaperers is one of Season 1's best. It's the start of the show becoming more plot focused now that we've had plenty of time to connect with the characters. And it leads perfectly into the season finale with one of the best ending hooks in any of these episodes. Shame I can't quite put it in the top tier, but it does have that one big blemish, and the rest isn't so mind-bogglingly perfect that it completely nullifies it. Season 1 episode 7, Double Dipper. A very simple and effective story about Dipper realizing how much he gets in his own way. And even though he and Wendy are obviously never going to end up together, it's great to see him realize that he can just be himself and talk to her rather than needing to orchestrate a big moment to make everything perfect. You can maybe argue Time Traveler's Pig walks back on this slightly, but in the context of him wanting to fix a mistake there, I don't mind it at all. The magic copier is a great supernatural hook too. All the Dipper clones overthinking everything are super funny, and I like that Tyrone becomes an outlet for Dipper to essentially tell himself all the things he needs to hear. I'd call this one of the funniest Season 1 episodes as well. The jokes were hitting far more consistently than any of the previous ones. Seuss with a dot and Stan jumping for the dollar continue to make me laugh every time I think of them. Mabel's side of the episode isn't half bad either. It's the introduction to Candy, Granda, and Pacifica. 3 characters I don't especially care for, at least before Pacifica's redemption episode, but they aren't bad here at all. Mabel's feud with Pacifica makes good use of the party setting with the absolutely legendary parody of Don't Stop Believing. And even though she loses in the end, I do like seeing that her friendship friendship with Candy and Granda sticks. It's good to give her friends to hang out with separate from Dipper, especially as he gets to spend more time away from Mabel with the other members of the main cast. Season 1 Episode 9, Time Traveler's Pig. An absolute classic. For as much as time travel hurts my brain, this episode uses it in really fun ways. Traveling to early in the town's history, leaving things in previous episodes which Brendan has to go and pick back up, which you can even see in those episodes, and going to the future after Time Baby regenerates from the ass-kicking that Bill gave him. The idea of a tape measure being the time machine is pretty silly too, I like that. It's used really well for Dipper's arc too. All the redos resulting in the same outcome convey the message that you should own your mistakes rather than fixating on other ways things could have played out. Obviously it's important to have that self-reflection and try to do better, but if you get obsessively lost in what could have been, then you'll be too focused on the past to care about the consequences of what happens in the present. Dipper making that sacrifice to get Mabel her pig back and stop Waddles from being eaten, then having the two help him get back at Robert goes to show that even if things don't go how you wish they did, there are always opportunities for things to go right in the future. I do kinda wish there was a stronger reason to why Dipper needed Mabel for his plan to work, or why she couldn't just get Waddles first when they have infinite do-overs. It's not all that bothersome, but it does make their conflict feel a bit more contrived than in some other episodes. Everything else is great though. Fun premise, constant banger jokes. Morty from Rick even showed up. What a quirky guy. Season 1 Episode 10, Fight Fighters. This is Season 1's episodic format operating near its peak. The main plot with Dipper bringing a video game character to fight his battles for him is pretty much non-stop with its banger jokes. Rumble McSkirmish is easily one of the show's best side characters. The action scenes with him are a ton of fun, and the video game references all clearly come from a sincere place, which lets me actually find them funny rather than pandering. That barrel scene is a really sick reference to, you guessed it, Wii Party 2010. I mean, come on, look at the name of the building, it couldn't be more obvious. It's also so funny that Robbie picked this fight in the first place. Like, obviously Dipper has no real chance with Wendy, but the fact that Robbie genuinely feels like his chances are being threatened by a 12-year-old is just fucking hysterical. There are plenty of great messages in this side of the story too. Dipper realizes not to have other people fight his battles for him, and dealing with Rumble by losing the fight can also be taken to say that sometimes you just need to take a loss on the chin rather than letting a problem snowball further out of control. Admittedly, I do think this coming after Dipper vs Manliness holds it back a little bit, since it feels like it's covering some of the same ground with the whole stand up for yourself and don't fight when you don't have to messaging. It's a lesson Dipper had already learned by this point, and that lesson had him beat up a bear, so I don't know why a scrawny teenager's enough to scare him off after that. Not a huge deal, it's a blast to watch regardless. It's complemented by one of the better B-plots with Mabel helping Grunko Stan to get over his fear of heights. Everything from the ladder indoors bit to Great Uncle's Day to the cocky jig on the water tower has been etched into my brain forever. Season 2 Episode 3, The Gulf War. After 4 plot-heavy episodes in a row, it's nice to take a breather with something lighter. It hints towards Pacifica's redemption by having her end up on good terms with Mabel, giving a strong message about not making pointless conflicts worse, all the while keeping the show's signature strong humor on point. So many great bits in this one that come from the creative concept of the golf gremlins. I love me some mini-golf, so of course I was gonna like this. Most of my favourite jokes didn't come from them though. Some of the standouts to me were the car scene, Let's Break In, and the instructor guy drowning in an ankle-deep pond. The little freaks of nature do get my favourite bit in the episode though, and if you've seen it then I probably don't need to specify what I'm talking about. I wrote a short list of notes for talking points in each episode, and under this one I just have Big Henry oh my god, which says it all really. Very simple episode, very effective all the same. Now we're getting into what I consider to be the highlights of the series. 13 episodes left to go, which is already a lot of top tiers for a show that's 40 episodes in total, and the fact that season 1 only has a single entry left should paint an even greater picture of how much I adore season 2. Season 1, Episode 15, The Deep End. Well, that didn't take too long to get Season 1's final soldier out the way. I don't remember if this was one of my favourites growing up, but I've seen a ton more love for it online over the years, and now I have to agree that I consider this to be one of the highlights of the show's starting half. Any of the competition that reaches similar heights, I can at least point to 1 or 2 things that I don't care for as much to stop everything from fully coming together. Here though, on top of a legit investing story about getting Mermando home, Mabel getting her first meaningful summer romance, and Dipper doing the right thing even at the cost of spending time with Wendy, you have what is easily up there as one of the show's funniest outings. Everything at the pool is absolutely top tier. Mr. Poolcheck is so goddamn committed to his job that it's hysterical, miracle, Stan's petty feud with Gideon over a chair watered my crops and cured my ailments, and holy shit, the break-in scene is gonna be one of the top 10 funniest scenes in the show. The only singular line I can say didn't entirely land for me across the 22 minutes was Mabel undercutting Dipper saving Mermando by saying she'd use it as blackmail. But even then, I think the lengths it was blown out of proportion to paint Mabel as a bad person by parts of the fandom were kind of ridiculous. It really isn't that deep. And you know what pushed this over the edge for me though? The bit that cemented this as an S tier episode. When Mermando spells out of the cooler, I thought, he spells pretty close to the lake. It looks like they could just roll him in there instead of Dipper needing to give him mouth to mouth. But whatever, that's probably just a minor continuity error. You can find those in just about any episode if you look for them. Then they hit me with this, which I had completely forgotten about.
Why didn't you just roll me into the lake?
That was the nail in the coffin for the rest of Season 1's chances of topping this. Everyone else go home. Season 2 Episode 19, Weirdmageddon Part 2, Escape from Reality. Easily the episode that's grown the most on me over time. I vaguely remember not being a huge fan of it before, then I grew to like it, but not consider it one of the show's best, and now it's just barely not cracking the top 10. I absolutely adore the conflict and resolution between Dipper and Mabel here, showing how they've always been there for each other no matter what life throws at them. I love how the flashbacks show examples of both of them helping out the other, not only helping Mabel realize that she needs to leave her bubble, but also letting Dipper realize on his own that Ford's apprenticeship ultimately would not be what's best for him and that he shouldn't take it. Something Mabel offers him the chance to go back on, but he doubles down. Dipper's speech and the sincere sibling hug that follows it hit me harder emotionally than almost any previous episode. Though it is admittedly ever so slightly deflated by "we've been to heck and back," it has the same energy as people saying "unalive" to get around demonetization. Either let him say hell or change it to a different line entirely. I also have to shout out Mabelland, a location with a ton of great callbacks and gags with something darker clearly bubbling under the surface. There are some decisions the characters make that I typically find irritating, like Seuss abandoning everyone for his dad or Mabel being generally unreasonable, which the rules of the bubble completely make sense of, since it's implied after Mabel snaps out of it that the temptation comes with some kind of hypnotism. This is a stellar follow-on from what the first Weirdmageddon part set up, and now stands as one of the show's highlights for me. How can I say otherwise when Xyler and Kraz get to return? This is easily their best episode. Season 2 Episode 7, Society of the Blind Eye. I can't talk about this episode without mentioning the fake leak Alex Hirsch made to throw the fandom off the scent when they started to put the pieces together about Ford's existence. He threw this image of McGucket writing the journals online, pretended to be mad about it, and then let us draw our own conclusions. Perfect choice to pin it on given McGucket was the biggest suspect on who the author was out of the characters we knew for certain existed, and it made the release of Society of the Blind Eye that much more of a bombshell. When they have Dipper and Mabel think McGucket's the author at the start, I was fully prepared for that to be the big reveal since it was the theory that I believed at the time. Instead, they pull the bait and switch. They tell us that McGucket isn't the author and instead worked for him, but doesn't remember who he is and needs some time to put the pieces together. As a substitute, we get the reveal of his backstory, and man, this shit's devastating. Seeing the footage of him slowly lose his mind until he ended up in his current state completely recontextualizes the entire history of this comedic relief side character, and it's super well done. It also serves as a great showing of the dangers of the memory erasing device. The episode has a really worthwhile message about how even our unpleasant memories help shape us and that we can't just shut them out completely. As much as I wish Wendy would have gotten a bit more of a compelling arc in one of these episodes, having her get on board with Mabel's plan to use the mind wipe over something as insignificant as an annoying catchy song shows how little it takes to get that ball rolling and potentially spiral into something worse. The only part of the episode I sort of raise my eyebrow at is questioning why the Blind Eye never target any of the Mystery Shack crew directly. I'm sure there's some sort of lore reason for that I don't know. Everything else about this one is peak. It's a great mystery that results in some cool lore evolutions to chew on, and an absolute gut punch of an ending. Season 2 Episode 4, Sock Opera. I love Bill Cipher Charlie. Anytime he's on screen it's an absolute delight. It's so funny to me that this is the one time he's in just some random episode. His other appearances are all either his debut to set the stakes at the end of Season 1, the post-Ford lead up to Weirdmageddon, or the big 3-part finale. Then in Sock Opera it's just like, oh by the way, Bill's here too. And I've always just found that amusing. He's even better here than he was in Dreamscaperers. It's like the crew have now fully figured out what they want him to sound like, and they play play up his sheer insanity even more with how he spends his entire time in Dipper's body battering himself. Beyond that though, he gets to show even more effectively how much of a threat he is, since he's able to corner both Dipper and Mabel when they're just emotionally vulnerable enough to make deals with him, with the latter only barely snapping out of it. Love that their sibling bond is able to overcome Bill's trickery and be the catalyst for taking him down. Everything to do with William Cypher is so good in this that I almost forgot there was an entire rest of the episode to talk about. Though I don't have as much to say about the three-dimensional side of things. Well, it's still a 2D show, but you get the joke I'm trying to make. It shows off how both of the twins will obsess over their own interests, but at the end of the day are there for each other beyond all else. Dipper hesitates to give Bill even a single puppet in exchange for the answers he's been looking for all summer, and only gives in because he gets manipulated in a tired and frustrated state. And Mabel actively sets fire to her week's worth of work to get her brother back, even when faced with that same manipulation. It's a super sweet way to show how much they care for one another. The sock opera scene is hysterical as well, especially when Dipper has to take over. And while I didn't much care for Gabe as a character, that's very much by design. The reveal at the end of how much of a freak he is and that Mabel dodged a bullet is such a great payoff. So yeah, not entirely carried by Bill, but let's be honest, his presence is what shot it into the top 10. They're past the baby steps with his character, and he's no longer got a forced misunderstanding subplot welded to his back. Season 2 episode 15, The Last Mabelcorn. Split into two incredibly different halves, and both are absolutely stellar. I can only assume back when it first released that I was significantly more interested in the Dipper half because that's where all the plot progression was. The reveal of Ford's history with Bill, the unsettling scene where Dipper gives into his uncle's paranoia and fires the memory gun at him because he thinks he's possessed, more emphasis being placed on the looming threat of Weirdmageddon, that stuff's all still phenomenal. My adoration for it hasn't faltered one bit. Nowadays though, I have an even greater appreciation for Mabel's side of the story. While it naturally doesn't have the same sorts of insane lore drops, I'd say it is significantly funnier. The drug bust with the butterflies is all the proof I need to show for that. The unicorns are also so comically annoying, and I hate them so very much. /positive. That's why it's as cathartic as it is to see Mabel punch one in the goddamn face and prepare to throw down with it. After spending the entire episode trying to prove she's pure of heart and falling into a rut of self-doubt over it, I completely understood her frustration upon finding out she was being toyed with the whole time. And since they need the hair to keep Bill out, but these dumbass horses aren't going to cooperate when they try to play by their rules, then they're rightfully gonna throw hands and take it by force. I don't even mind that they didn't show the fight. It's one of those cases where what you picture in your head is going to be way better than what they could show, especially since Disney wouldn't let anything too violent get through. A very similar situation is the season 13 finale of Red vs. Blue. Having it all play out off screen is the best course of action I think they could have taken with it. Mabel's journey here does also come with the takeaway that you can be good without needing to be flawless. It's not all black and white. A few blunders don't make you a bad person, especially if you can recognize your shortcomings and try to do better. It's heartwarming to see Ford affirm to her that she is a good person, even if she doesn't believe it in the same way anymore. What a shame that this is the closest we ever got to having an episode to establish a dynamic between Ford and Mabel though. If only there was a hypothetical spare episode slot between this and the final arc that they could have used for something like that. One can only imagine. Season 2 episode 5, Susan the Real Girl. An episode so good that it took me a decade to realize, I guess this is a one-off with no advancement to the overarching plot. Not that I consider that a flaw now. It's just funny that I was so taken in by Susan's love life that I didn't notice. And do you know how crazy that is coming from me of all people? I hardly ever care about romance plots, even within Gravity Falls. But damn it, Susan and Melody have such adorable chemistry together, and it's so sweet to see Sus get with someone off his own charms and quirks alone. I love how committed Dipper and Mabel are to helping him too, and there are a ton of amazing jokes along the way. "You can't undo who you are" is one of the funniest lines in the show. Hold on, her writing is this fire? Oh, and how could I talk about this episode without mentioning Giffany, one of the most memorable additions to the Gravity Falls Rogues Gallery. Rumble was already one of the best executed examples of video game pixel art I've ever seen in a show, and Giffany takes it way further with far more expressive animation and an abundance of creative visuals. She even kills Rumble to get across the different playing field we're on now. And she's not all style, she is a pretty compelling villain taking on the role of a spiteful, clingy ex. The only slight letdown is some of the characters getting captured off screen in the final battle, which which is a footnote compared to how on point everything else is. Even Stan's B-plot trying to steal the badger is great. I mean, he ends the episode married to a statue, what's not to love? Season 2 episode 8, Blendin's Game. Out of all the episodes to not directly advance the overarching plot, this easily has the most emotionally resonant story to me. I never expected Seuss to be the kind of character they'd give a tragic backstory to, which makes the reveal of him hating his birthday because it's when he realized that his dad would always flake on him sting so much more. They get to flesh him out a lot more, even though he's not really present for a bulk of the episode. And it's so powerful for him to see what the twins went through to get him the time wish, and realize that they're more like his family than the person that never cared about him. And as a bonus, these interactive flashbacks give us the chance to see what Gravity Falls was like 10 years ago for a couple extra funnies. One joke I always found especially funny was Dipper's realization after the role reversal of him and Wendy. Oh yeah, and I like the resolution with Blendin. Given that he never really did much wrong in Time Traveler's Pig, it would have felt a bit unnecessarily mean to keep him as a villain or outright kill him, which they do almost do, and it's peak comedy. Choosing to instead give him his job back and let him be happy is very sweet. I like that even he can't disagree with Infinite Pizza being a good time wish. Come to think of it, a lot of the comedy in this episode involves the overuse of the word time. Honestly, it's so intentionally uncreative, dumb, and repetitive that it loops back around to being hilarious. I would never do that too, though. You'd never catch me doing that in a million years. I guess I can see why some would be disappointed about the Globnar battle portion of the episode being super rushed, and it kind of is, I won't deny that, but I'm not too bothered since that's not the focus. The core of the episode is with Seuss, and in that regard, it excels. Now, if it were a two-parter that got to do more with Globnar without sacrificing screen time from anything else, then maybe one of those episodes would have cracked the top 5. As is, top 10's nothing to be ashamed of. Season 2 episode 1, Scarioke. It's insane to me how much more I love this than anything in season 1, and it still didn't end up cracking the top 5 by the end. Where Dreamscaperers and Gideon Rises were climactic conclusions for their half of the show, Scarioke marks a shift in the overall approach going forward. Plot progression is much more front and center with a lot of mysteries getting answers, and the dramatic stakes are being upped significantly without sacrificing any of the one-off escapades. Both aspects are on full display here because we've got the setup for the government agents, the reveal of the invisible ink in the journals, and more build up for Stan's portal accompanied by a zombie outbreak at a party, which is foreshadowed as well as the Norm reveal in the pilot. It's far more intense than anything the first 18 episodes had to offer, and we didn't have to trade off any of the humor. Zombie Seuss was hilarious, Stan fighting off the zombies was awesome, and everything peaks with the karaoke scene, which is one of my favorites in the whole show. I love musical numbers in non-musical series, I love when multiple characters sing at once so I can pick out their individual voices, and this scene is so perfectly silly while being an immensely satisfying way to defeat the threat. I absolutely adore everything this premiere has going for it. It's an even stronger hook than Tourist Trapped was, and is one of Gravity Falls' most entertaining packages in my eyes. Season 2 episode 20, Weirdmageddon 3, Take Back the Falls. Compared to everything else in this tier, I have a couple more problems with Weirdmageddon 3. I already mentioned not being a fan of the backpedal in Pacifica's development, Stan's refusal to cooperate during the Zodiac feels a bit too unbelievably contrived, and Bill kinda has to be nerfed into the ground by the plot in order for that chase scene to function. You can sorta rationalize it with him being tunnel vision, too angry to think clearly, generally underestimating the kids, or some combination of the three I guess. So that one's not as bothersome as the other two. Really nothing here is actively a huge detriment, just a few wrinkles that slightly hold it back from what could have been the top spot, because the rest of this is a perfect finale to the show. It's so immensely satisfying to get to see characters from a ton of previous episodes get to team up for the final stand against Bill, resulting in one hell of a sick fight with a Shacktron set to a guitar cover of the theme song. Bill's defeat comes about in a natural way that makes use of what the characters have to deliver on an absolute gut punch of a sacrifice for Stan. Yes, he gets his memories back, yes, you can argue it was a cop-out, but I don't think I would have liked the ending nearly as much if Stan wasn't there as himself to say goodbye to the kids. And they do set up through McGucket that it's possible to recall erased memories, so I can't say I'm too bothered. We get the emotional moment, it has time to set in, and the revelation that Stan's mind can be brought back is a welcome way to lead into the happy ending instead of having it be super depressing. And like, The bus scene. What do I even say, man? I guess I could complain that Seuss and Ford don't really get their own dedicated goodbyes. That's a bit of a shame. They did have to keep within a time frame though. And with what they did do, this is easily up there as one of my favorite scenes in the show. Each of the twins getting to say goodbye to the closest friends they've made during the summer, the Stans forcing the bus driver to take Waddles back to California after Mabel thinks she'll have to leave him, Dipper and Wendy swapping hats as a memento, the bus driving off after Dipper reads the see you next summer card because he starts to miss Gravity Falls immediately. It has all the emotional weight it needs to, while continuing to balance it with jokes that don't undercut a thing. The montage showing all the side characters living their best lives with Seuss as the new shack owner, the Stans on the boat, and so on wrap everyone's stories up perfectly. The bit that always gets me though is the goodbye with Stan. Just another reason why I'm glad he got his memories back. Having him deflect with a joke about how he's glad to be rid of the twins as his eyes well up with tears is the perfect way to go about a scene like this with a character like him. And it's always the bit that gets me the closest to welling up to. Is it any surprise that this is one of the episodes I had the most to say about? Weirdmageddon 3 ends Gravity Falls off on as high of a note as it could. If I humoured the split and judged them separately, Part 3 would have been somewhere in A tier, and Part 4 would have potentially gone for the top spot. Together they make for not my absolute favourite episode of the series, but easily still up there with arguably the highest heights it ever reached. Season 2, Episode 2, Into the Bunker. One of the best showings of Wendy as a character. It's cool seeing her solve puzzles in her own way, and it's touching to see her comfort Dipper after he spills his guts to what he thought was her corpse. This actually wraps up the Dipper Crush plotline exceptionally well since it gets the big moment where the truth comes out and doesn't result in any lingering awkwardness. Mabel being Dipper's wingman in a sense was nice too. She does get them put in danger, but her actions came from a good place and she had no way of knowing about the shapeshifter beforehand. Is it a little dumb that she doesn't believe Dipper about there being a monster even though Wendy's freaking out as well? Yeah, sure. She still steps in to save them as soon as she realizes she screwed up and apologizes afterwards. So I don't see this as a huge blight on the episode. The shapeshifter is a phenomenal one-off antagonist, giving us the most horrific image in the show up to this point and raising the stakes significantly at the risk of it getting loose. It's such a great oh shit moment when Wendy notices the mascot on the tin, and their final scuffle works in a perfect callback to the inconveniencing. While it might not be the author like we initially expected, it does give us more to speculate on following one of Gravity Falls' finest episodes ever. Season 2, Episode 17, Dipper and Mabel versus the Future. Having this ranked above all of the parts of the finale it sets up feels very strange to me. I guess it's just too good. Dipper's story here is incredibly exciting. We get confirmation of the UFO crash, which is a theory I remember being massively speculated about for a long time, so it was cool to see it get addressed directly. The action scene with the alien pod trying to steal Ford only for Dipper to take it down and stand his ground is a phenomenal way of showing how far he's come, and the offer of the apprenticeship really did make me think that's what would be best for him when I first watched it. Things continue to look brighter for him in this episode. That makes the contrast of Mabel's repeated string of disappointments even more heartbreaking. Her optimism about high school is shattered, her friends are leaving, her plans for her birthday party are in shambles, all made worse by how her brother, the most important person in her life and the only one she thought she could count on, is now saying he's also going to stay in Gravity Falls while she gets sent back home alone. Her anxieties for the future really hit hard, and I think the blowout she has at Dipper is completely understandable given the state of mind she's in. This is one of the scenes I see cited to paint her as selfish most often, because I guess some people expected the 12-year-old girl to hear this bad news that would have a massive impact on her life and respond by calmly shaking Dipper's hand and wishing him luck with a smile. Get real. I love so much how this is maybe the episode to play the most into the themes of how each twin views the future, as if the title didn't already give that away. Mabel fears it while Dipper actively embraces it to a much greater extent than he should, to the point where he'd sacrifice the most important years of his life in order to grow up quicker. It sets up some excellent development for them in the finale where Dipper learns to slow down and not take the cheat code to life that had probably turned him into a crazed loner, and Mabel's able to partially set aside any worries about growing up since she'll have her brother by her side to get through it with her. The ending with Blendon is maybe the biggest oh fuck we're screwed moment of the show. After a season of build up about the dangers of the portal and the rift it created, Bill's able to concoct a situation where he's able to possess someone Mabel trusts, get her to give him the rift while they're alone and she doesn't know what it is, and smash it to pieces to set the stage for his impending apocalypse. From the moment Blendon shows up, even before he starts going on about the rift, you can tell something's off. It culminates with maybe the greatest ending stinger in all of Gravity Falls. fitting for one of their best episodes. Season 2 episode 12, Tale of Two Stands. If Not What He Seems was the satisfying moment of seeing the elaborate set of dominoes get knocked over, Tale of Two Stands is the fascinating behind the scenes showing the dominoes get set up in the first place with all the planning that went into it. It immediately endears me to Ford, recontextualizes Stan's entire life and so many prior moments in the show, hooks me in by showing how the brothers fell apart and how Ford got lost in the portal, and reveals the origin of so many secrets that I and the rest of the fanbase had been speculating about for the better part of 3 years. It's one of Gravity Falls' most dramatically potent episodes, giving us a clear picture of how hellish life became for the twins after Stan got kicked out, since he was constantly on the run, and Ford was going insane in the woods before getting dimensionally displaced for 30 years. And yet, after everything they've both been through, all the time they spent apart, and how much Stan is put into trying to make things right, his screw-up seems impossible to make up for. It's tragic to see the two still on bad terms, even after the conflict with the government is over. I wouldn't call this one of the funnier episodes, obviously since it's going for a less lighthearted tone than normal, but the few jokes it does tell still land all the same. This is probably going to be one of the shorter segments because, I mean, it's the big secrets revealed episode, what do I need to sell you on? Outstanding on all fronts, love it to death, only surpassed by Season 2 Episode 11, Not What He Seems. The top spot was an easy choice for me, and I don't mean that in the way I usually do where there's a big gap between it and everything else, because there really isn't. Plenty of the ones that I've just talked about do hold their own in a direct comparison. The reason I say this wasn't a difficult choice is because there's simply nothing else quite like watching Not What He Seems for the first time. Gravity Falls is a show built around the mysteries it sets up, so it was natural that the episode to reveal the answer to the show's biggest question was always going to be a standout. If you'll let me indulge my nostalgia for a second, I vividly remember the lead up to it after all the speculation I'd read over the years, watching the preview clip over and over, and being so excited to finally get to watch it once it released with no social media temptation to potentially spoil me. And once I did, when they revealed the author of the journals after several years of theorizing, that shit was unlike anything else I've ever experienced. I don't tend to watch a ton of shows, much less ones with big overarching mysteries on this level, and even less that I dedicate my now more limited free time getting into the trenches of speculation for. So in that sense, I don't think it's likely for anything else to capture the same feeling to me as Gravity Falls dropping their bombshell reveal for their biggest long-running secret. That is the main thing it has going for it, but it's not the sole reason for it to place at number 1. For it to do that, it would still need to have plenty to enjoy on a rewatch once the initial shock value of that first viewing's worn off. Not to worry though, because the rest of the 22-minute runtime puts in that work to back up the ending it leads to. Goes without saying, there are plenty of good jokes. Wow, shocker, the Gravity Falls episode was funny. It's not like I've said that 50 times already. To be honest though, in this regard, I actually don't consider it one of their best showings. They're a bit sparser, and there are a couple that don't quite hit the mark. In most other contexts, I'd maybe knock it down a few places, but that's not where this episode's strengths lie. It's actively going for a more serious tone, so the fact that it has as many laughs as it does without any major whiplash is ridiculously impressive. The dramatic approach they take with this one works wonders for how much the stakes continue to ramp up. Stan gets arrested, so the kids have to prove his innocence. They do some digging and only affirm that the agents were right, even finding more of his crimes that flew under the radar to add on top of that. And just when they think they might have a place to get answers, all they discover is a machine which we don't currently know what it does, a warning about the potential destruction of the universe, and the countdown that's been ticking away in the background since the cold open. It's all built up to this. What may be my single favourite scene in Gravity Falls. Stan shows up and tries to talk the others out of shutting the portal off, which quickly devolves into a fight that leaves Mabel as the sole decider of what to do. The timer's nearing zero, everyone else is holding Stan back. They've just seen Journal 1 and his fake identities as proof that he's been lying to them all summer, even more than he previously let on. Mabel doesn't know what to believe at this point. But with everything on the line, she goes against the message that we got told from the first time we saw the journals and chooses to trust in her uncle, letting go of the button completely so that she can't have any second thoughts. A detail that was recently pointed out to me is that this is one of the few times Stan earnestly says please without being prompted to, making Mabel realize how sincere he's being. I also hear some say that Stan should have explained what the device was for here, but I don't know, I think this thing with the doomsday warning's actually a portal to another dimension so that I can save my twin brother you've never heard of would make about anyone look more guilty, much less someone with Stan's history of lying. Even on a rewatch knowing how the story goes, I continue to be floored by how much the scene manages to draw me in every single time. It's telling how even with this show's equivalent to the Ozymandias meme face being something I find super funny out of context, it doesn't remotely take me out of the intense moment when I'm watching the episode. It's a scene that on first watch made me question everything about Stan, made me wonder whether he could be trusted, whether the characters would make the right call. And now, over a decade later, I can appreciate how well constructed the scene is, with the lighting, music, dialogue, and 30 episodes worth of build up to ensure the audience has enough attachment to the characters to give this all of the narrative and emotional weight it deserves. This is the episode that, aside from the finale, they most needed to get right. It's the boiling point the show led up to for about 3 years, and I don't think it falters at all in getting there. It's why, in spite of the absurdly tight competition it has to fight against, there is no Gravity Falls episode I adore quite as much as Not What He Seems. Well, that was a fun list to make. I got to yap about my current favourite Western cartoon and had a great time. I won't keep you here because you've already heard me go on for what I'm assuming is about an hour based on the length of this script, so let's close this out. If I've kept to my schedule, then I'll be on summer holiday when this video gets published, so I'm gonna go enjoy that now. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you got something out of it. See you next summer. Well, I'm not going to take over 9 months to upload again. I was doing a callback to the show. It was a very subtle reference.